It's June of 2006. The iPhone was less than a year old, and it was a time when it felt like anything was possible with software. I was 10 years old in 5th grade, watching E3 during the lazy days of summer in rural Utah. But something I'll never forget is when this came on. It was the first trailer for Final Fantasy Versus XIII. The visuals were dark and gritty and stunning, the music somnous, lonely and haunting. And it left a deep impression on me. I even saved up to buy a PlayStation 3 so I could play this game at launch, but I had no way of knowing at the time that history wouldn't be nearly so kind. Year after year, I'd tune into E3 with excitement and reverie, waiting to finally see that release date for what I convinced myself would be the most important piece of media in the decade. We got the teaser trailer in 2006, sure, but the next time we'd see the game at E3 would be 5 years later in June of 2011. A lot had changed for me in the interim. I'd moved a few times, made new friends. I was about to start high school and hadn't even started thinking about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And that's when it happened. This is a fantasy based on reality. I honestly can't think of a more perfect sentence to encapsulate the tone of the Versus 13 trailers. A uniquely futuristic sort of pre-cyberpunk fantasy world. The E3 2011 trailer only served to further fuel my excitement. 2012 came and passed without a mention of the game, but that's fine, I was used to it. Waiting for Final Fantasy Versus XIII news was a part of life for me, as natural as breathing. And that's when it really happened. In June of 2013, 7 long years after the original trailer changed everything, Square Enix dropped a bombshell that would do it again. The trailer to go along with this announcement was a big, bold, beautiful set piece containing more tantalizing story details, adding more to the world. We got a taste of the story's antagonists and the world's geopolitical intrigue. We got to see glimpses of improved prestige AAA gameplay, and at the end, we found out that Final Fantasy Versus XIII was now Final Fantasy XV, a mainline entry into the series. I'd never been more excited for this game. This allayed any doubts that myself and I think other fans had about this game. And so, I bought a PlayStation 4 to play Final Fantasy XV. Flash forward to Tuesday, November 29th, 2016. My first year of college. I had an idea at this point what I wanted to do in life and was actively working towards it. But this day is more important than that. This is the day that Final Fantasy XV came out for the PlayStation 4. I took the next couple of days off, and I played through the entire thing, and it was just okay. Final Fantasy XV, and by extension, Final Fantasy Versus XIII, had a troubled development and changed directors partway through from Tetsuya Nomura to Hajime Tabata. It felt rushed. The world felt sterile and barren and censored from the original. My first, and this is true, my very first vivid memory was the attack on the Twin Towers, but this was my personal 9/11. I'm sorry for putting a 9/11 joke in this video, but I wrote it and I just couldn't delete it. I had idealized this thing in my head for so long, its unique aesthetics and world. Maybe I was longing, as so many people do, after something that could never exist. I was disappointed with 15 and tried to move on. And aside from the occasional rant to friends, I did, for a time. But then on Friday, January 25th, 2019, Kingdom Hearts 3 released, and as a lone CG in the Toy Story world, we're introduced to a fake game called Verum Rex, with a protagonist named Yozora who was uncannily similar to Noctis from Versus 13. I didn't want to get my hopes up. I knew that this was a Versus 13 reference, I knew, but I just wrote it off as a nod. I didn't want to get sucked back into Versus 13's cruel embrace. But 1 year later, on January 23rd, 2020, 2 months before a lot of things would change for a long time, DLC dropped for Kingdom Hearts 3, at the end of which Sora would fight Yozora in a city that resembled both Insomnia from Versus 13 and Shibuya, Tokyo. After which we were given this cutscene, which was a frame-for-frame recreation of that This Is a Fantasy Based on Reality trailer from 2011. Again, I wrote this off as a cutscene tucked away in something that only hardcore fans would encounter. The director Tetsuya Nomura's nod at a dream project that never reached fruition, but ultimately was just a reference. But on April 10th, 2022, after I'd finished college and moved twice across the entire United States, we got a trailer for Kingdom Hearts 4, which was predominantly set in a recreation of Shibuya, Tokyo, the same city from the Kingdom Hearts Remind DLC. The trailer also had this. This quote, along with the Somnus leitmotif, is a Versus 13 reference. Maybe Kingdom Hearts 4 will be the Versus 13 I've wanted for so long. Maybe it won't. At this point, it's been 16 years since the original announcement of Versus 13, so I guess I can wait to find out.